Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files. This is your host, Stephen Keeler, the Rock Fantasy Man, and yet another of our classic album battles. We set the time machine to the year 1967. So these are two of the oldest albums we have ever talked about on the vlog. We're going to visit two albums from Mr. Jimi Hendrix. With Are You Experienced and Axis Bold as Love. Both are celebrating 55 years around the sun in 2022. And here's a little bit about each release. I didn't go into depth too much because I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of it on the episode. Are You Experienced is the debut album by Jimi Hendrix Experience, and it was an immediate critical and commercial success. It's widely regarded as one of the greatest debuts in the history of rock music. It features such timeless tracks as Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, Manic Depression, Fire, The Wind Cries Mary, and we're not even talking about the bonus tracks that were on this album because there's a great amount of great songs in that too. It peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Top 200, and it's certified 5 times platinum. Axis Bold as Love, on the other hand, is the second studio album by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Only 7 months after the release of the debut album, it peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Top 200 in the USA. Hendrix, one small note on the album art was I had a landlord, I'll go into details, that did not like that poster hanging in my store several years ago. Hendrix was not a fan of the cover art. He stated that the cover art would have been more appropriate if it had highlighted his Native American heritage, and that the three of us had nothing to do with what was on the Axis cover. And in fact, many of the Hindu religion had expressed anger over the use of the religious images for the album's artwork, and it had a different cover in some countries because of that. And I had a landlord for a while. This is probably back in the 2000s. He walked into my store because we had a problem, and he was of Indian descent. And he said, "Who was that poster? And what are those people doing on there?" And I said, "Well, that's Jimi Hendrix. That's an album from the 60s. It's very legendary." He said, "Well, he is going to have problems when he goes to see his maker because of that." He was very offended by it. Like he wanted me to take it down. Yeah. So, but that was just my little story on it. But we've got some new people on the channel tonight. We've got Ryan Gavaliere. He is from Vinyl Destination, and he has his own YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook, right, Ryan?
Both YouTube and
both in reviewing albums and stuff. So check him out. I'll put links in the description. Back, we got Jack from, what's the name of your channel? It's Nada, Jack or Nada?
All or Nada, according to
All
Jack.
or Nada. Yeah, I knew it was Jack in there. I'm sorry. I saw some good stuff, and he just talked about the AEW pay-per-view. So that sounds like an interesting to check out if you like the pro wrestling. We got Miles of Metal back here tonight, becoming a regular on the channel. We got Joey Spaghetti Lee. We got Rand Kelly. We've got singer-songwriter Rick Labonte. And we've got Ralph Tambora, Count Ralphus here, our local metal and rock historian. And Ralph has got to go out of here earlier than everybody else tonight. Do you want to go first, Ralph, or should I pick somebody else?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first.
All right, great. You got our Jimi Hendrix bobblehead there. You're all set to rock. Got all great decorations up. It's good. Welcome.
All right. So let's start off with this album, Axis Bold as Love. This is the original gatefold.
Yeah.
Got all the lyrics inside and stuff.
Nice.
And I guess for my number 3, I'll start off with If 6 Was 9.
Yeah.
Take it to song. And my number 2, it's not as a hard or heavy rocker as a lot of the stuff that I usually really love by Hendrix, but it's a bit special to me. I had a friend, he was a guitar player, and they played local clubs, and they did all Hendrix and Doors and stuff like that. And it was always fun to go out. And he passed away about 10 years ago. And when he died, his wife reached out to me and asked if I could draw something to get engraved onto the headstone. And she said she wanted musical notes and a bird and some flowers. And I said, well, what music notes, I said, what was his favorite song? and she said, "Oh, Little Wing was his favorite song." So I said, instead of just putting musical notes, I figured I'll look up the musical notes for that song, and I found them. And here's the drawing. I don't know if you could see it too good, but
Oh yeah, nice.
That's nice, Ralph.
Yes,
Real
weird stuff,
nice.
brother. Very nice.
and they reversed it on both sides of the headstone, so it goes like all around the headstone.
Wow.
So every time I hear that song, ever since then, it's always stuck in my head. You know, I even asked like, what was his favorite bird? He said swallow, and you know, so I tried to make it more specific than just, you know. But anyway, yeah, it's a special song. Now I can't listen to it without thinking of him. And my number one for this album is Spanish Castle Magic, one of the better, harder rocking songs off of it. For a rating, I'll give it an 8. It's not as rocking and hard, classic for me as Are You Experience, which to me is like such a perfect album. I got the 3D album cover.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Is
Nice.
that is that the from Knucklebones Rock Icons?
No, that came out back in the 90s. They did
That's
like
an
a
actual
Zeppelin
album?
one.
I'm sorry.
No, it's just like something that you would hang on your wall.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's small. Yeah.
Out like, and they did Led Zeppelin's first album. They did a Master of Puppets one, couple
Okay.
other ones.
Because I know
Yeah, the old-
Knucklebones has been doing some of that stuff lately.
Yeah, I got the Merciful
Nice.
Fate,
Yeah.
Don't Break the Oath, the Bones, and I'm waiting on an Earth Day D from the Misfits one. They're really expensive.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few $100.
My old cassette.
Yeah.
So, for this one, man, it's impossible to pick 3 songs.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
If I had to pick an album from the 60s as the only album I could own, this would be it. It's above every album that came out in the 60s for me. To me, it was the heaviest thing at the time. I would almost think it's like death metal at the time for how heavy and hard rocking it was. I know you had like Cream and stuff, but something about the Hendrix Experience was just more energy, and the drumming was so crazy. And I think Mitch Mitchell is such an important part of this band. Like he complements everything that Jimmy did so good. And, you know, there might be better technical guitar players than Jimi Hendrix, but no one's ever been as innovative as him. He's one of the legends for a reason. And so, yeah, this is hard. I started writing down the songs, and I was like, I got to do 5. And then I started doing ties for 5s, and it ended up being every song on the album, the original.
And
Like I had,
don't even include the bonus tracks because they're just
No.
great tracks too. My God.
Yeah, the singles.
I had number 5, Love or Confusion, tied with When Cries Mary and May This Be Love. Then for number 4, I had Foxy Lady tied with Are You Experience.
Okay.
Number 3, I Don't Live Today tied with Hey Joe. Number 2, I had Purple Haze tied with Third Stone from the Sun. And for number 1 tie was Fire tied with Manic Depression.
No,
I
okay.
know I cheat, and I just named like pretty much every song. But
This is probably the most cheating I've ever had, and I think even on Pete Cardo's channel. But I think it shows how much you love the album.
it's the perfect 10. It's timeless. It still sounds so fresh today. The production, everything about it, one of the greatest albums ever. And that's my bid on it.
Cool.
Good stuff.
So we got 1 vote for Are You Experienced if we're calling this an album battle. Per se, we're just kind of talking about it, but I guess we'll play the game of the battle. I'm going to move over to our friend from down Louisiana. He's been known to wrestle an alligator if you involve alcohol at times. He's told me this before. But
Yes, I have.
but he's also a great music fan, and he's been on the channel a lot. And welcome. And he has a YouTube channel, Miles of Metal. So welcome back, brother.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. Yeah, so I would say I'm younger than a lot of people on the panel. I'm 28. But I got into Jimi Hendrix whenever I was real young because I remember my dad playing Voodoo Child for the first time, and I was like, what is this? What is this crazy guitar going on? And then, learning that this was Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that. I had just been infatuated with this man since I was younger. It's just like everything I hear by him, I just love it. Just love his guitar playing. Like Ralph said, Mitch Mitchell is his drumming is just bombastic. It's beating. It's just heavy. And I've just been a fan of Jimi Hendrix since I was real young. Even I used to say he was the best guitar player to ever walk on the face of the earth for the longest time. So going back and listening to these albums, I was just so surprised because I was listening to them today at work for the show. And I was like, man, these albums still sound good for 1967.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, these albums, the production just sounds so great. And I'm going to start off with Axe's Bold as Love. And yeah. And listening to this album, obviously knowing about Are You Experienced a little bit more, I was like, this is more of a progression, a nice progression from Are You Experienced, being that this is the second album. And I was reading a little bit on it, and I don't think he wrote or recorded anything at the time, during Are You Experienced that went on this album. I don't know if I'm correct or not, but Nothing I Seen was he record, usually at that time you would think that he would have some stuff written out that would be on this album, but I couldn't find nothing. So I was real surprised how much of a nice progression it was coming from the first album to this one. And if I had to pick 3 songs off of here, If 6 Was 9 is a great song. Castles Made of Sand would probably be number 2. And then my favorite song off the album was Spanish Castle Magic. That was just listening to that, I would say that's one of his best songs, but he's got so many great ones. The whole band's got so many great ones. And Are You Experienced? I mean, basically it's a greatest hits of Jimi Hendrix, if you want to be completely honest. I remember the first thing that my dad ever bought me from Jimi Hendrix was a greatest hits of his music. And basically the first time I ever heard Are You Experienced, I knew almost every song on here because it was on that album. Wow. So, like Ralph said, this is a heavy album. I can't disagree at all. For 1967, this is pretty damn heavy, especially with that beginning of Purple Haze, that guitar riff, just so just heavy. And my 3 favorite songs off of here would probably be number 3 would probably be Manic Depression. I really do like that song. I think Mitch Mitchell's drumming on there sounds real good. He's prominent on that track. Second, number 2, I hate to be cliche, but because I've heard this song so many times, it comes on my local radio station all the time. But Purple Haze, no matter how many times I hear it, I still love that song. I still sing it every time I hear it. And then my favorite song off of here is Hey Joe. I think Hey Joe is just when he says, I'm going down to shoot my old lady and stuff like that. I was just like, damn, this dude really wants to kill his old lady. I'm like, good Lord. I can hear it, just feel the lyrics he was saying in there and stuff. And then the whole music throughout the whole song. It's not the heaviest song he's ever written, but it's just a great song to me. And also you got, The Wind Cries, Mary, Fire, Foxy Lady. Me and my brother used to listen to Foxy Lady all the time when we were younger, because we used to like when he said Foxy Lady. Wow, 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 wow. And we used to love that. Me and my brother used to have that on repeat when we were younger. Just an awesome album. If I had to rate Axis, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. And Are You Experienced? how can you not give that a 10 out of 10? It's one of the greatest debut albums to ever be made. So, yeah. If I had to pick out of the two, I'm obviously going with Are You Experienced.
Yeah. Okay. Cool, man. Gonna move over to Mr. Jack Toledano. It was like got a great backdrop, and welcome to have you back on the channel again. And let's hear what your 2 cents are on this, sir.
As I was jotting some notes as Myles was finishing, first of all, I'll say I was one of those late bloomers where I didn't start playing guitar until I was in my mid-30s. I got a bonus, so I went out and bought a guitar and amp and started taking lessons. And one of the first chords that my teacher taught me was this, what he called a Hendrix chord, the E7 sharp 9. You know, with Foxy Lady, the coolest thing. But anyway, talking about these albums, and I could easily rattle off about 7 or 8 of my favorites from each album. But I'll start with Axis Bold as Love. That album, I would say I felt fallen in love with more of the deeper tracks on that album. You know, it's really grown on me. So my third favorite, You Got Me Floating. I love the vocal harmonies on that one. The second one, Castles Made of Sand. I just, that amazing guitar tone and riffs, I think, are to die for. You know, it's almost like a hollow sound emanating from those single coil pickups of his Strat, but they just sound so amazing. And then, of course, my first one is a little bit more of a hard rock tune, Spanish Castle Magic. I have a funny feeling that that's going to be a recurring theme on this show. My observations of both albums, I think Axis is a little more psychedelic, whereas Experienced is a little more bluesy, but a little hard rock thrown into both. And like I said, I could easily rattle off about 4 or 5 more songs from each album. I'm going to give a little shout out to She's So Fine. I think Noel Redding does a great job with the lead vocals, and it kind of sounds like early Traffic.
It does, yeah, it does. I even hear like maybe a little Cream in that song.
Yeah.
So I would say 8.5 out of 10 on Axis. Great album. Are You Experienced? Well, I mean, what else can I say? That's an easy 9.5 out of 10. The thing about Are You Experienced, it's almost like they were 2 different albums released in the UK and in the US.
Yeah, the set list.
Yeah, I mean,
Different.
they mixed the songs around. I can't believe Purple Haze doesn't even appear on the original UK pressing, but
Wow.
not to worry. But so my third is one of those deeper buried tracks. I've always loved Can You See Me? Great song. Second song, it was hard to not make it my first song, but Stone Free. I just love that. What is that, a cowbell or some kind of, that percussion that he's playing, throughout the song. And, just such a great song. And then, of course, my number one is, a little more melodic, The Wind Cries Mary.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know what? That's not to say, I got to give a shout out to Hey Joe again. I just love that guitar tone. It, really speaks to me. Manic Depression, Foxy Lady, etc., etc. So that's my spiel. And I mentioned I also my taping last night. I did mention that I was going to be on this, and I gave a little homage to Jimmy. Gone way too soon.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you think we were just talking before we went on record button how many live material he has out there. Heavy bootleg for a guy with a short career, and as Ram remind us that he only had 3 official albums.
yeah.
And 1.5 in a can before we lost him. And when you think about it, what would he be like in 1977? Everybody talked about how he's perfecting, he's getting better at his craft.
Yeah.
I can just imagine what he would have done through the
Right.
prog and funk
I
era.
I liked where
Right.
he was going with Band of Gypsies. I
Yeah.
thought he was going more improvisational jazz like, more
Right.
experimental.
That's my
Right.
favorite Jimi Hendrix release is Band of
Yeah, I
Gypsy.
thought he was getting
Yeah.
better.
I agree.
These
I agree. The
albums,
Cry of Love is a great one to example of what was left there. So I mean, just imagine he was gone so soon, like everybody said. But just even 10 years of his work, he never had a chance. We can just imagine what he would have done because he was so inventive, as everybody was saying.
Well, Rick, since
In this great book, it's like a day to day of how he was living, and he basically was living in Electric Ladyland Studios at the time. Like
That's
every
right.
day he was in there working on something, and
hmm,
that's why I think he keeps getting all these new releases. And they keep finding all this stuff. I mean, every day he was recording. If he wasn't in the studio, he was out at a show watching bands, and the next day he was in the studio again, and then he'd go play a couple concerts, and he's back in the studio. So that's how he was living near the end. So if he would have
Exactly.
kept that, if he would have kept up like that, he would have had so much to give the world.
Agreed. That was my whole point. I mean, like Eddie Kramer would follow him from night to night to some of the shows, and that's why we got some of the stuff from the soundboard. Luckily, because you know there was always a record button going. Could Jimmy
sure.
be so creative?
So, hey, Rick, since we're talking, why don't we just throw the record over to you? I used to say throw the ball, but we're talking records. So, hey, it's your turn to
Okay,
spin the
well,
vinyl.
what I do is I give my pick of the album, but I just go in order of how they came out. Obviously, what you said was incredibly true. I mean, what amazing first album to come up with, right? I
Mhm.
mean, like everybody said, it's almost the greatest hit right there. What an impression, and so not only you get a lot more blues, and then you get a lot more psychedelic or psychedelia, however you want to say it. But there was a lot of originality here, and I agree with everybody who said of their picks. I mean, I don't get sick of Purple Haze. I don't get sick of any of these songs that are maybe played a lot in the radio. They're timeless for a reason. They made a hell of an impression, and Hey Joe is a beautiful recorded song. But I'll pick the original Jimi Hendrix. None of the covers, but I do love what he does when he covers Bob Dylan or anybody, because he does it with his own personality. Anyhow, there's so much brilliant stuff here, and what I'm been trying to think of throwing in my blues act is some of the tunes that I see on here, because I think they're awesome. And so I'm gonna start with because of the lyrics and because of the drama, and he's heavily influenced by Bob Dylan at this point. Like, as far as being artistic on and choice of words that you gotta say, it wasn't just what was typical happening around that time. He did, it made you think. And When Cries Out Mary would probably be my third one. Number two would be Fire, just for the energy of that, and I just love that. And like everybody said, Mitch is really shining here on drums, but it just to get me pumped up. And still to this day, I'll probably drive a little faster if that was on the car. Number one, this is tough, but I'm gonna go with the third stone from the sun, because it's so trippy, and it's so awesome, and I just think it's so really daring for him to put an epic tune 6:40 at that time. 6 minutes and 40 minutes, pretty daring. But I mean, I like a lot of this stuff. You guys, I agree with Ralph. I could call a draw on every one of those numbers, because like these are just iconic album and songs, and the band is really something out there that was totally unique. They're not influenced by anybody. Like, they're starting their own territory, and definitely groundbreaking. And for rightly so, we go to the next album, which is, they know they have an audience, and they also know that it's the drug culture. They know people are burning one or taking an acid or doing something part of the experience. because after listening to the very end of Are You Experience, you know he was in the territory. So to open up with ESP and up to the from the sky is kind of silly today, maybe for us to say, or maybe dated because of that. You know, talking to the Martian or whatever they guess from outer space. But it was trying to prepare the listener that at that time we were really future, we were really you know, they're trying to go to the unknown. So it's really about being experimental, and so that was kind of nice that you just the effort of recording that for a beginning of the record was showing you a little bit of time of saying that we were trying to expand and try to be very creative and really think out of the box. So it's really a loud statement just to open a record like that. It wasn't something, it became that an album is now a part of a theater. Sit down, the curtain is drawn, you know, the show's about to begin. So that was pretty creative for Jimi Hendrix to do that as a second album, right? He could be a Pop-Tart and keep coming up with these little hits here and there because they had him in the first album, but he wanted to be taken seriously as an artist and being creative at that. So that's kind of interesting because this is like pre-concept album, right? Sgt. Pepper would come out later and all these people would do that, an effort for a whole album, but he kind of did that to start a record. My favorite one would be if I could make a tie. I don't know, because I do like Castle Made of Sand, and if 6 was 9, and I was duking that out. But I go with 6 if 6 was 9, and number 2 Little Wing, just like Ralph, and number 1 Spanish Castle Magic. Those are my favorite.
Okay.
And like I said, what makes this album not out of between the Are You Experience or this one. Because of the way they open the record, I might even start just the third song down, right? Whereas I don't skip nothing on Are You Experience. If I want to hear him be trippy and do that little, I mean, it's only 3 minutes. It's no big deal. But I'm just saying, sometimes I start the album with that Spanish Castle Magic. So if I say that, I say this is my choice, and this wins the battle for me.
Cool.
Are You Experience?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for your input, Rick. As we go through this tonight, we're going to go over to Spaghetti next. We're going to go to Rand. We're going to go to New Gay Ryan, and I'll round things up on this episode. But hey, so Spaghetti Lee.
All right.
It's time to talk Jimi Hendrix, not Geddy Lee.
Getting- all right. I had really cool parents, and I grew up with the Hendrix collection in my house. I am going to say something that is so probably offensive right now. One of my earliest memories as a child, Jack, this happened in Levittown. I could have been in diapers, okay? And I took a copy of Electric Ladyland, the vinyl, and I held it up to the chimney and scraped the whole thing. I mean, I was a kid, 2, 3, 4 years old, but I have this vivid memory. So these records were in my home. Of course, I don't have that copy of Electric Ladyland anymore. But so as I grew old enough to have my own stereo in my room, these records came in. So for as long as I could possibly remember, I have known these records from start to finish. So like other guys said, picking a favorite on either one of these is really difficult. If you asked me even 10 minutes from now, it could possibly change. But a couple of things that are noteworthy about both of these albums. For 1967, they're both very almost futuristic. They're also really heavy. Like Ralph is right on point. This is the summer of love, dude. This is hippy dippy flower power. And then, Are You Experienced comes out, and that's just a kick to the teeth, man. Just the open Purple Haze on the American edition. Interesting point Jack brought up. The set lists on the UK and the US was so different. If you guys look at that, you should Google it and check it out. Crazy, because when I looked at it today, I was shocked at how different it was. Purple Haze opens up the American version. I think it's buried deep in the album on the UK version.
It's not even on the UK.
Not on the UK version.
It's not at all.
Not at all.
They released it as a single. They got that idea from the Beatles. The English albums were being put out, and they put out the singles, and they thought it was ripping off the fans if they put the single on the LP. because people
Oh,
were
wow.
listening to
Also
45.
the dawn of the album rock era. This is the changeover culturally in the industry where bands went from making singles to actually making albums. And like
Yeah.
Rick said, sit down and listen like theater. Here's a record for you. This is the industry was changing at this time.
Yeah.
And you know, both of these albums are basically meant to listen all the way through. I think making singles, I guess they had to make singles. Of course, the industry wants to move units, but
Right.
all right. Without going getting too out into the woods here, I'm just curious. One thing before I give you my my ratings and my picks. When they released "Are You Experienced" and the name of the album is "Are You Experienced," what do you guys think he was asking about? What experience? Acid?
That's what I
Yeah,
always. That's what I always thought.
I'm going acid. Are you experienced with acid? So, all right. On Axis Bold as Love, my favorite tracks would be number 3, the title track, Bold as Love. I actually really like that. There's a jam band called Fish out there that actually does it quite a bit, and I'm a
Oh,
big
do
fan
they?
of Fish, and I'll catch a lot of shit for that. Yeah, they also do Fire. Hendrix
I've seen Fish once, but I've never heard them do those covers.
Yeah, no, they do that. They cover a lot. They'll cover a bunch of stuff. That's a
Okay.
whole separate episode. Also, Castles Made of Sand. And number 1, can I pull a Ralph/Pardo?
Sure.
Little Wing is really beautiful, man.
Yeah,
it
it
really
is.
is. And If 6 Was 9 has to be my favorite track on here. I mean,
I
I
love
really
it.
just love that doo-doo. That's one of those I have that vivid memory as a child, just putting the needle in the groove all the way to If 6 Was 9 and that doo-doo. I like so cool. Really cool. All right. With Are You Experienced? Oh, and I give that the album a solid 9. With Are You Experienced, my favorite tracks are, I mean, number 3, I like the title track, Are You Experienced? I like Red House on here. And my favorite is Manic Depression. But one thing I want to say about all of these tracks on both of these albums is they're almost like little commercials for Hendrix's live show. I mean, there is no comparison to what Hendrix did live. If you look at the timing of these tracks, they're all 2 and 3 minutes, most of them. There's a couple of longer ones, but they're like little almost advertisements for what he did live. He stretches these things into 6, 8, 10-minute long jams, all of them. I mean, his Fillmore East show on New Year's Day 1970 is just unbelievable. The jams he did on that. I mean, the Machine Gun on there is incredible. So Hendrix, as great as these albums are, is so much better live. In fact, I listen to Hendrix regularly. He's been in rotation forever in my house. But I rarely go to these albums. I am always listening to live material.
Okay.
I mean, always listening to his live material. So just to put a button on it, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to give this a 9 as well. Both of these albums are solid 9s. If I had to pick a winner, if you have to twist my arm for the win, I'll go with Are You Experienced just because it came out first. You know,
right.
They're both equally great records. I mean, equal to me. They're excellent albums.
I agree. I rate the same way. That's perfect.
Yeah.
An interesting note to our viewers, where I live and where Ralph lives, and we're Spaghetti Lee, local guys in the Hudson Valley, we're about maybe 30-minute, 35-minute ride to the original Woodstock site. So which is now the Bethel Woods Center for the Arts. And we're very close. I mean, I was too young to go to that festival, but I remember the traffic jams and everything, and of course Jimmy's iconic set there. But I wanted to mention that. And one thing interesting about, before we go over to Rand and to Ryan, as we were talking, you had the question about what the experience was, and I love how the notes are on the back of this album. I have to do it in my best radio voice. Are you experienced? The one everyone's been talking about, the excitement of the Jimi Hendrix experience. So this would be the commercial, right? And Be Forewarned used to be an experience making you a bit older. This one makes you wider. With the assistance of Mitch Mitchell on drums and Noel Redding on guitar, Jimi Hendrix breaks the world into interesting fragments, then reassembles it. You hear with new ears after being experienced. Those who only see him perform know only part of this experience. They rave about a young man who plays a guitar in more positions than anyone before him. Now this debut album will put the heads of Hendrix listeners into some novel positions. Be forewarned. That's the back of the album for those that don't know it. But I thought that was very interesting as I was reading that as I was listening to everybody.
Steve, I bought this at the Bethel Woods Museum.
Okay, yep.
Nice.
Refrigerator magnet.
I went to Woodstock in 1994, and in between, I think Santana and another act, they had a painter come and play the music of Jimi Hendrix that he played at Woodstock in
Oh.
'69. Paint. And next thing you know, he put the bandana, and then you can't really tell, but next thing you know, he's building a fender, and you see this painting. By the time the song was done, he painted Jimi Hendrix there, and the crowd gave it a roaring cheer. Right? It was amazing. I was like 24 at that time.
You didn't go to
And,
Woodstock '99 when Red Hot Chili
I didn't
Peppers
go to
were
99
playing
where it went
fire and
crazy.
started on them crazy people started burning shit to the
Oh,
ground.
yeah, I didn't go to that either.
I didn't go
been
to either of them.
94. That was pretty cool, though.
That's
But
freaking
anyone,
nuts.
anyone that visits the New York area, please, if you're doing a vacation or a trip to the area, please know that there is a Bethel Woods Museum, Woodstock Museum at Bethel Woods, where it's a very interactive thing that you can walk through, and there's films
They
and
got tons of Hendrix stuff in there.
Oh,
they play
yeah.
the movie theater in there that plays the Woodstock, and you
cool.
can watch the whole Jimi
Mhm.
Hendrix performance. It's amazing.
yeah, one of my good friends, Howard Levine, that runs with the pinball club in my store at Orange County Pinball Club. He actually works at the museum.
Nice.
I think it's closed now, but it opens up now in April, and it'll be open all summer. And I mean, if you go up for a concert, you can go before. You can just go up any day and see the original site, and you can have food there, and it's really nice. It's really nice what they've turned the place into.
I've been there a few
Right,
times.
yeah.
I can attest it's a great place.
Yeah.
Hey, I even got a flat there and had to call roadside assistance, so I got to spend extra time there.
I mean, I know a few people that are Woodstock originals that were actually at the fest that live in the area that talk about, stuff. A couple of my good friends I talk to quite a bit still, original Woodstock guys that were part of that crowd.
We got the Who
Nice.
coming back to play
Took the
there.
brown acid.
50 years later.
Yeah, the Who are gonna come back for the first time since 1969. Well,
Oh, very cool.
they're
That's
gonna be
right.
playing there in June. I think it's June, right, Ralph?
I think it's May. I think it's May. I'm not sure.
Is it that
Late
soon?
May, I
Wow.
thought, yeah.
Anyhow, Miles, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to say how Spaghetti brought up the live performances. I remember the first time I ever seen a DVD of Jimi Hendrix live. My uncle had a whole bunch of live DVDs. We used to go to his house and he used to turn them on for me, like Rush, Zeppelin, all of them. And I remember he had I forget what performance it was, but he had a DVD of Jimi Hendrix. And I was like, man, I want to watch the Jimi Hendrix one and listen to all those songs. He was like, dude, let me tell you something. Those songs sound way different live.
Mhm.
And then I was like, well, I want to hear them. And I sat there and watched that DVD, and I was just like in awe of just like all the improv he would do, all the stuff he would throw into the songs. And like you said, the songs, they're like 2 minutes on the studio album, and it
Yeah.
drag it out to
Mhm.
but it never got boring. Like sometimes I
No.
get crazy, sometimes I get over long songs, but the whole time I was just like loved hearing every note that was played on those songs live.
Yep. Cool.
So Steve, just one quick thing about that museum that we were talking about.
Yeah.
As you walk through that museum, towards the end, there's like this big theater screen. It's almost like what they call that 360 vision or what are
Mhm.
they called? But
Mac at the curve screen.
yeah, so they play like I don't know, like a 20 or 30-minute constant revolving mini concert
Yes.
of Woodstock, and that's constantly playing, and you get to see Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner and
Mhm.
maybe one or two of his other songs. It's
Yeah.
the coolest thing.
Yeah, there's a couple of films that go on in there. There's one where you actually go sit in a theater, and there's another one where it's got like beanbag chairs and things around where you kind of sit and look up at the ceiling. If I'm not if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, Joey, if you're close enough to go, you don't live far. So Rand, I guess it's your turn. I don't mean to make you wait so long, but I
Oh,
got
that's
Rand.
fine. It's fine. I love listening to everybody. It's great. You know, I'm the oldest here. I was
Thank goodness.
raised on this guy, you know.
me.
I was 14 years old when I first heard, are you ready for this? Purple Haze on AM radio. I would
Wow.
be driving to school with my mother, driving me to school,
Mhm.
and Purple Haze would come on the radio. And she would go, what the hell is that? But she didn't turn it off. She let me listen to it. Anyways, wrap your head around this. He came out on Reprise Records or Reprise Records. Frank Sinatra owned that company.
Did he?
Yes. So he allowed Jimi Hendrix Experience to do the first 3 albums. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Fly me to the moon. Anyways, I'm going to go in chronological order now since you know, I already talked about that song. Heard it on the radio, and we also heard Hey Joe. Now I want you to know Hey Joe is a cover song.
It's a cover, right?
It was done by a band called The Leaves, and it was really fast. It was like a punk rock song. It was a pop tune. It wasn't heavy at all. It was really
This
fast.
is
It
a folk
was
version,
like,
too.
hey Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand? Like that. Well, Frank Zappa stole that tune and put it on We're Only in It for the Money, called
Hey
Hey
Punk.
Punk. Yeah, that's a trivia.
I'm going to
And-
the loving to sit and play my bongos in the dirt.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Zappa loved hippies.
And then
right?
here's another trivia for Jimi Hendrix. You guys were talking about what he would have done if he hadn't have passed away. He was getting ready to do a band with Keith Emerson, Greg Lake, and Mitch Mitchell, and they would have been called Helm. A lot of
Is that
rumors.
right?
A lot of rumors say it was going to be Palmer, and they would have called it Help, but it wasn't Palmer. It was going to be Mitch Mitchell, Keith Emerson, Jimi Hendrix, and Greg Lake. And Keith Emerson said, the only guitar player I'll allow anywhere near me is Jimi Hendrix. And that didn't happen. And also Jimmy wanted to play with Miles Davis.
I heard
And that may have
yeah.
happened. That
He
may
was
have
heading-
happened because he was going in that direction. I mean,
Yeah,
Buddy
out
Miles
of
was a
band,
jazz
out
guy.
of Band of Gypsies, he was heading in that
Yeah,
direction. He wanted to do
Exactly.
he wanted to do a big band. He wanted to get into fusion and jazz and stuff like that.
Right. And Miles was
Yeah,
going
Miles was-
crazy
yeah.
electric psychedelic at the time. And you listen to
Right.
Miles Davis in '69, it's like, whoa.
But Miles
that's-
already had John McLaughlin, so that
Right.
couldn't work out. But anyways, I bought that.
Interesting.
I didn't buy any Hendrix albums for a long time, but I heard them all the time. People had them. So I'll get right into it then. I just wanted to let out some of that trivia.
One more trivia thing. I mean, Purple Haze was a single and it was on the AM radio in
Yeah,
67. So, I mean, of course, in the 60s and early 70s, you would hear a mixture of everything on the radio, a lot
Right.
of hard rock. And I
right.
mean,
You heard acid rock. They play Iron Butterfly, Vanilla Fudge,
I,
and all this stuff. And then now that they've got these oldie stations and stuff, they don't touch acid rock. They won't play it.
I have an oldie station here in the area that does play quite a bit of that stuff, Cream and Hendrix
Yeah.
and stuff.
Well,
But
I live in Redding. I live in
depends
Redding,
where you live, I
California.
guess. But yeah, it actually peaked at number 65 on the Billboard Hot 100. Purple
Yeah.
Haze did. I'm sure a couple of the other songs on this album may have charted too. I should have done my research on that, but I didn't.
Another little bit of
Interesting
trivia
thing.
for guitar players is that Purple Haze had a really weird solo that nobody could figure out what he was doing. And he had a little toy called the Roger Mayer Octavia. And so when he plays the solo, it's an octave higher than the normal guitar can go. And Les Paul was doing that with tape speed editing and stuff like that. But Roger Mayer figured out a way to make the note go up. So that's why that solo in Purple Haze is so really high, like right at the end where he goes before the other intro lick. Is that's
I
the
find that
Octavia.
interesting. I
He
find
didn't
that
use it
interesting.
very often, but he, it was really a good effect on that particular song.
I did find that interesting about Frank Sinatra helping him out because I know he couldn't really get a break in U.S. He actually got famous in England. They said,
Right.
"Wow,
Nobody
who is
wanted
this
him over
guy?"
here.
Yeah, and then when he played at the Monterey Pop Festival, and the whole world got shooken up. Wow, who's this guy? But that's pretty bold
Yeah,
to
because
put him on.
he burned his guitar
Yeah,
on stage.
yeah, that was pretty bold for Frank to do that. I didn't know that. That was interesting.
Yeah. I just found out that the other day. I mean, I was watching, I don't know, I was watching.
What's that guy's name? Chaz Chandler from the Animals.
Yeah,
is the
Yeah,
guy that
from
the
the
brought-
bass
brought
player
it.
from the Animals. Yeah.
Right. But I mean,
And he-
Hendrix had work. He was working downtown in the Village in New York. He worked for the Isley Brothers. He was in the Isley Brothers
a
band.
little bit,
Oh yeah.
but
He was.
He
He
didn't
had a
express
band called
himself.
Jimmy James and the Flames. He had his own group, and it couldn't get. They couldn't get
Yeah.
arrested.
I think
Nope.
Chaz Chandler saw him at the Cafe War or something and said, "We're going to make this
Right.
guy a rock star."
And
then
he
brought him
also
over to
played.
London.
He also played with Little Richard. Well, you see the movie Jimi Hendrix. Watch that. And Little Richard's always talking about how he knew he was
Little
gonna be a
Richard, how
star.
he invented
That's
everything.
the movie right there. Yeah.
Nice.
This
that
is
the
just
one where they
amazing.
couldn't
It's
use-
like it's
that-
choreographed.
Is that the one that they couldn't use any Hendrix music in?
No, that's not.
Oh, okay. They
Okay,
made a
so-
movie about Hendrix. They couldn't use any of his music.
You
Yeah,
said
was-
that
that was
so-
the movie with Andre 3000 playing Hendrix, and they
I don't
couldn't
know.
use none of his
I never seen
music.
it.
Yeah, that's.
never-
I
that
heard
is-
about that.
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty bad.
So you said that Jimmy actually played with the Isley Brothers. Did he
Yeah.
record? Did they record any music together?
There's stuff out there, yeah. With him,
Okay.
He
playing with
taught
them.
Ernie Isley how to play.
Because if you watch some of the, I'm a fan of the Isley Brothers because I grew up
Me
listening.
too. I love the funk
And
years, man.
if you
Yeah.
watch some of the videos of them live from that period, man, he looks like Hendrix. Like
Yeah.
he total like got the headband and Ernie.
Yeah.
And
Ernie
that
looked,
tone and Who's That Lady is just to die for. I don't know how it gets that sound. To me, it sounds like a bubble. It sounds like
Yeah.
there's a
Isn't that
hole inside
amazing?
the song.
That sound on that solo, man, is great.
a
The
phaser.
Isley Brothers are
There's
like
a phase
buried
shifter on there,
treasure.
but it's something
Wow.
different. He does play a Stratocaster though. I think he uses the neck pickup, but oh my God, what a great tone. Anyway, you want me to go into the albums now?
yeah, we better before we just talk.
I
We,
did-
we could
I
talk
did
for
as much.
hours.
Yeah.
We could drop a lot of nuggets about
I
like
also
just
wanna say
various
Paul
stuff. on
McCartney
this.
got Jimi Hendrix into Monterey
Okay.
because he played at the Marquee and they went and saw him. The Beatles went and saw him. Eric Clapton was there. Jeff Beck was there. Pete Townshend was there. And he opened the show with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which had only been released 3 days earlier.
Right, brand
Paul
new,
was so impressed
brand
that he
new.
had learned the song and played it because he knew Paul was going to be in the audience. That's why he did it. Amazing.
Wow.
And he kills on it. Rick showed that, Hendrix in the West. That's the first song on that record. I've got it on LP. It kills. I don't know why it's called Hendrix in the West. I mean, it's in England, but Western London, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I got to get to the business, huh?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
get-
well, I'll start chronologically with this. Now, I showed this before, but I don't know if anybody saw it. The British cover looked like this.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, and he didn't like that cover.
He didn't. Did he like this one?
Yeah, he wanted a more
fisheye.
psychedelic one.
This is a fisheye lens shot,
Right.
Mm.
and I think it was in some park in London or something.
So the original album in '67, that's the original UK cover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wow. Why-
yeah. It says our experience on both corners on the top.
yeah, I read that he
It
did.
doesn't even say Jimi Hendrix Experience on the front of the album. Not at all.
Yeah, I read that he didn't like that cover,
That
and
shows
then when they
those
were
three guys.
releasing it in the US, he brought somebody in and he said, "I want it to be psychedelic," and that's
Yeah.
why.
That's
It's
why
like
we
that.
got that. What we got, yeah. So, anyways, I love this album. I do. I've heard it more. I'll have to admit, I've heard it more than Axis Bold as Love, but I do love both of them. Okay, so I wrote this down on what I do is I send an email to myself on my phone and then I can read it. I'll go with Are You Experienced? Number 3, Fire. Number 2, Third Stone from the Sun.
Mhm.
I just love that song. I mean, I can't rave about that tune enough. I mean, as a guitar player, just learning how to play, that was like, I think I can do that. That was the double octaves, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's octave chords, eh, buddy?
They call those double stops. Am I
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
And number 1, Purple Haze, because of how it affected me as a new guitar player, just learning. I'd only been playing 2 years, just starting to learn lead, and I'd already learned rhythm guitar because of the Beatles and John Lennon.
Mm.
And Purple Haze just knocked me for a loop. I just couldn't believe how great it was. To this day, I don't get tired of it. I could listen to that over and over and over and over. And it's, to me, it's a perfect song. There's nothing wrong with it. Short, but he does a really nice version of it in the Woodstock movie.
Mhm.
Anyways, where are we going here? Oh, yeah. So I'll give that album a 9.5.
Yep.
And Axis Bold as Love, I chose number 3. I'm going to do a Pardo and do a tie for number 3. That'll be okay.
Pull a Pardo.
Little Miss Lover and tied with You Got Me Floating. I just love You Got Me Floating. The rhythm guitar in that is so much fun.
It is cool, right?
Yeah, you could teach somebody how to play that like in 2
Yeah.
seconds, you know. And number 2, Castles Made of Sand. I mean, come on.
Yeah, man.
Nobody played rhythm guitar like that back in '67. I can't even do it today. And I've tried it, and it's really hard.
It is.
And it's so good. And I think the one guy that really nailed that kind of rhythm playing was Eddie Van Halen. He was really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
Stevie
And
Ray
my number one on Axis Bold as Love is Spanish Castle Magic. I just
Yeah.
think that song is just freaking, just balls out
It's killer.
crazy heavy. It's so heavy for that time. I mean, you know, Black Sabbath's first album has very few songs that are that heavy.
It's the heaviest on that album for sure.
I know, it's great. And when you listen to Robin Trower's first 2 albums, you can see where the influence came from. It's Spanish Castle Magic. I mean, there's just total Trout in that song. It's just amazing. So I give that album a 9 because the only reason I'm not giving either one a 10 because that's reserved for Electric Ladyland, which I think is
Okay.
the most fantastic album ever. For me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Incredible.
Pretty
If you ever
amazing.
do a show on Ladyland, I'll go crazy.
All right,
You'll
well,
have to reel me in, Stephen.
all right, we're gonna have to pull that one off. It's down the road. Cool. So anything else to add, Rand? And then we're gonna move over to our new friend Ryan.
Well, I'd like to do a quick plug for his latest thing called Live in Maui. This is phenomenal. This is a
That's
Blu-ray.
great. It's a DVD, right? Yeah.
It's a Blu-ray, and it opens up in a 4 kind of
Yeah,
a 4-way thing.
I have that on vinyl.
I've seen it. It's a daytime show too. DVD,
This is
DVD,
so
right? During the
good.
day. It's like a
Yeah, I've
matinee
seen
during
it.
the day.
I own the movie. Excuse me, Rainbow Bridge. I own the original DVD. This doesn't show the entire movie. It only shows certain selections. They edited a lot of stuff out, but the performance at the bottom of the volcano is just freaking phenomenal.
That's a bit like, you know, you could do a whole nother episode on that
And at
performance.
the end of they open up with In From the Storm, which was never on an album.
Mm.
And at the end, the guitar riff, and I knew I recognized it from somewhere. It goes dun 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 dun. You got that from Jeff Beck. That's
Oh.
Flint. Water Down the Drain from Beckola.
That's an interesting story, that whole concert and what happened and how
Yeah.
it came out in Hawaii. And it was like, a
Yeah.
very strange.
Rand,
Well,
who was
he
his
thought they
band?
were
Was that,
he thought they were lunatics. He didn't realize what he was getting into. He just came to
was that
play, and they were filming a movie all about themselves, and then they would have Jimmy come in at the end. And the whole movie, you think you're going to see Jimi Hendrix. He's hardly even in it.
I know it's brutal.
no? Rand, who was in his band at that Maui show? Was that Mitch
Billy
Mitchell and Noel
Cox
Redding?
and
Yeah,
Mitch
right.
Mitchell.
Okay.
Yeah, Noel Redding was gone by then.
Right.
He started his own band called Fat Mattress,
Yeah, I got the vinyl sitting here somewhere as well in
which
my
to
room.
this day I've never heard.
Cool. Let's move it over to Ryan, and sorry to make you wait forever, but I guess but that's the initiation for the new guy tonight. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Ryan.
welcome to the club, Ryan.
Sometimes we make Rand wait. Sometimes we make Rick wait. Sometimes I gotta wait at Pete Pardo shows too.
No, I meant welcome to our club.
Oh yeah, welcome. I hope to have you back for more things. But Ryan, tell us a little bit about you. You work at a record shop, and you have a channel, YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun hearing all your guys' opinions on these albums. Yeah, I have a Facebook and I have a YouTube. They're called Ryan's Vinyl Destination. Also, there's an Instagram for it too. On there, I review a lot of albums. On the YouTube, I've changed it to just be collaborations now because I've been doing a lot more written reviews by myself. But, I talk about all genres of music, rock, metal, jazz, funk, soul,
Okay.
funk, new wave, etc. Just pretty much everything. But I've worked in a record store for like 5 years on and off. I'm also a musician. I play guitar, bass, a little bit of drums, some piano, and I sing too. I've been recording a lot of stuff. Music's just like my main thing in life. It's, it makes up every single moment of my day pretty much.
Me
So
too.
Jimmy, yeah, thanks. So Jimi Hendrix, that's a great segue into that because he's basically been a part of my life since I was young. I started learning guitar when I was 6, and I obviously was not at the point of playing Jimi Hendrix for a little while, but once I did start playing his stuff like Purple Haze and especially Voodoo Child, I just play that stuff for hours, like every day, just trying to get those wah effects on Voodoo Child down pat. Like it was just so much fun to me. So he's hugely influential to me in that aspect. As I went on later in life, I respected his music for even more, especially for his rhythm section, Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell on those first albums. Just absolutely amazing. Mitch Mitchell is one of the best drummers I've heard in the 60s and, one of the best ever. He's a jazz drummer through and through, but like bombastic too, and so much feel there. And that definitely is going to play a lot into my opinion on these albums and which one's my favorite. But, just so much, I feel like there's nobody cooler than the Jimi Hendrix Experience in 1967. Like, I feel like a bunch of the big bands at the time were like, oh crap, we got to step it up now because it was just so different than anything else that was out. Like, so let's start off with, Are You Experienced? Definitely one of the greatest debuts of all time. You have classic songs the whole way through. Definitely a little bit bluesier of an album than the next one. I think that it's, very revolutionary with his guitar tones, especially more than anything. It's just so dirty sounding at times. And there's also some really interesting recording effects throughout. So my number 3 song, I had a real hard time picking number 3. It's between Third Stone from the Sun and When Cries Mary for my number 3 pick. Third Stone from the Sun is just such an awesome song. It's super trippy. His guitar playing throughout is stunning. It was really daring to have an almost 7-minute, mostly instrumental. I know like artists like Zappa and like Hot Rats would have some longer compositions that are instrumental like a couple years later, but like to do that on here was so risky, and it's like such a psychedelic song too, just very atmospheric and takes you to a different world. And then When Cries Mary, I think it's probably the most beautiful song on this album. He has a cleaner guitar tone on that one than a lot of the other tracks, and I think it did him really well with that. I mean, the lyrics are great on it. It's just a fantastic song. My number two is going to be Manic Depression. I just, as I mentioned before, Mitch Mitchell, he's like the biggest part of what I love about these albums, honestly. Like, as I listen to them more and more, because I mean, I've been in love with Jimmy's playing for so long, but like appreciating Mitch's playing is just something that's given me, like, reinvigorated my love for these albums even more. He's just so bombastic on that song, and it sounds like something you would hear on a like 60s hard bop jazz album, but it's even crazier. It's like just so lively, and then the riffs throughout that song are just amazing. I mean, that was one of the ones that I really loved to play when I was starting to learn Hendrix songs. So if I'm gonna rate this album, I mean, I'm gonna give it a 10 just because I don't have anything on it that I can complain about. I don't have any flaws at all. So like I can't give it less than a 10. Usually if I give something a 9, then there's probably something I don't like on the album. So then we're gonna go to Axis Bold as Love, which was released 8 months later
Hey, look.
than Are You Experienced, which is absolutely crazy to me, because I mean, they recorded Are You Experienced late 66 and early 67 because it came out in May. This one was out in December. When you think about the progression that happened between those two albums, it's just nuts. It's like Hendrix, I feel like, definitely had a vision of what he wanted to do and what the band wanted to do. And I feel like they kind of showed it even more on here. It was less bluesy. It was a lot jazzier. It was funkier. It was more experimental. I mean, the album begins with EXP and Up from the Skies, which was just so daring for an album in 1967. It's practically just spoken word with voice effects going all over the place, higher and lower, and then noise effects for like another minute. And then it goes into this like dreamy psychedelic jazz song, which has amazing drumming by Mitch Mitchell also. So just right off the bat, it's such a wild album. And you just have so many great songs on here. I mean, if I'm going to do my top 3 today, number 3 is going to be Castles Made of Sand. I mean, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful song. That rhythm guitar throughout's just like so lush and stunning. And I think that's one thing that I really like on this album, is that he did kind of clean up his guitar tone a little bit more. I love the dirtiness on the first record, but I think he found a balance between having that and then also some really lush effects and tones to give like a really dreamy and truly psychedelic experience. I just realized I didn't do my number 1 song on Are You Experienced. It's actually the title track, Are You Experienced? And that kind of goes into what I'm talking about now with his guitar tones. I mean, that's a very dirty song guitar tone. That opening effect, that's just so cool and trippy. Like, I think we know what he was talking about with that song when you hear those guitar effects, and then you hear like the volume controls throughout it, and like, it's such a weird, dirty, but also like kind of beautiful in its own way song. So back to Axis Bold as Love. My number 2 track is going to be If 6 Was 9. I think that was really the song that sold me that Hendrix was like a whole another level. Like, I had heard a lot of his stuff, but when I heard that song, I was just like, oh crap, like that riff opening it up, and then just like the kind of like jazzy little drum. Like it's just so cool. I mean, the lyrics are some of his most I guess you could say real world, political, daring in its own way, and like it's very interesting on that aspect. And you know, it just gets so chaotic as it goes on too. It's just a fantastic song. But my number one track, even though there's so many others that I could have picked, because this whole album's perfect in my opinion, is going to be Spanish Castle Magic. You know, it's kind of beating a dead horse. It's just like one of the heaviest things that he ever put out. The riffs are fantastic. I remember when I first heard that song, as I was starting to learn Hendrix music on the guitar, I was like, yeah, it might be a little while for that one. Like, I was just like, that's, you know, I was kind of intimidated when I first heard that song. I mean, obviously 10, 12 years later, it's different story from when I started playing Hendrix stuff, but I was just blown away at that point. And, you know, just the also amazing drums by Mitch Mitchell on that song, especially just super bombastic. Great bass playing by Noel Redding. And, you know, I do think it's really cool on this album that he got a songwriting credit too, which She's So Fine. And then one other honorable mention on this one, Little Miss Lover. I mean, that's another one of the heaviest songs that he put out. It's just so good. So if I'm going to choose between these albums, which is really hard because I think they're both 10 out of 10s, like I love this album so much. And I'm going to have to choose Axis Bold as Love.
Nice.
Just because I think, like I said, in 8 months, he progressed so much with his sound, and that band did. It's just like awe-inspiring. And we've talked about it on this episode multiple times. If he had more time, what would he have done? I think he would have been like the forerunner of music for a while, honestly, because I think he would have kept trying new things as time went on. I mean, the idea of him playing with Miles Davis is just like one of those things I'll fantasize forever. I know it never ended up happening, but that's just like so cool. I mean, John McLaughlin's another one of my favorite guitar players of all time, but like to think of Miles being on those albums, I mean, think of Jimmy being on those albums too, it would have just been a masterpiece. So yeah, I'm going to choose Axis Bold as Love. I think it's a more developed album. I think it showed a lot of progression as a songwriter and as a musician, and it's just my favorite Hendrix album in the studio, although Band of Gypsies is the best.
Cool. Well, he's actually ruined the sweep here, but cool. I love
Got some
everything you put
variety.
to it. What's that?
Got some variety instead of
Good,
everybody just
yeah.
making a sweep.
We all agree that it's a tight race anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
very.
Yeah, well,
look at the ratings. Everybody said 9, 8, or
yeah,
really
it's
close.
like
That's
many
awesome.
other ones.
But I like how he said he was intimidated by Jimmy's guitar playing. The only thing I can play on guitar is the beginning of Smoke on the Water. So anything I hear from him, I'm intimidated off the bat. Can't even fathom it.
Yeah.
So
One thing that was constant though, pretty much everybody picked Spanish Castle Magic as their
Yeah,
favorite
that's the
tune off
winner
this
so
album.
far.
At
And
least we ain't
I didn't-
lying. It is an awesome song.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
gotta
right.
I gotta give my picks now.
Can I do something real quick before you do?
No. Yes, I got.
Well, I'm old and I forget things, and if I don't
Me
say it now,
too.
I might not say it later.
Go ahead.
So Ryan, there is a bootleg, and I own it, of Jimi Hendrix and John McLaughlin jamming.
Oh my gosh.
Long. They go about 45 minutes.
How's the sound quality?
Decent.
Cool.
It was something that was going to get released, but I think Alan Douglas put the kibosh on it.
Cool.
It's
So,
really awesome. Those two really, they loved each other. They were great friends.
all
that's-
right, cool.
that's
So
fascinating.
I'm
A lot
gonna
of great
go.
stories. I'll wait till after I tell you the
all right,
Zappa.
On to the main event.
So
Steve
let me
Keeler.
let me do the picks before I forget to do them all together, and people go, you didn't give your picks because you guys were talking. But Anyhow, my favorite tracks on Are You Experienced? It's hard. I mean, I feel the song's really played out because of its radio play, but how do you go against Purple Haze? I mean, just the opening riff is, it's just, the dan, dan, dan. How many times, that comes on and it just is so powerful. My number 2 is I love Manic Depression because I feel I deal with depression sometimes and I'll get that. Like one day you're just like so excited about everything. And the next day you're just like, and it's the whole manic depression. It's a frustrated mess. And I've lived that life at times. And my number 3 is going to go with Fire. The bonus tracks on this album, which is a lot of people said have showed up on other albums, but I love Highway Child. I love Stone Free. And I really like 51st Anniversary from the bonus track. So I cheated and added those to the list. And I'm going to give this album a 10. I don't know how you couldn't. It's just got all these great tracks. And like Ralph said, Ralph made it a tie for every song on it, which is the first ever on their channel. But that's just cool. So I move over to Axis Bold. Little Miss Lover is definitely on that list. If 6 was 9, and Spanish Castle Magic, so I'm not going to ruin the streak with everybody on that song. And Castles Made of Sand is there's such great songs. 2 great albums. I'm so glad we got to sit down with everybody else on the channel and discuss Jimi Hendrix because it's long overdue. We probably should have had an episode of him at the beginning of this channel just for what he's done to heavy music and and just all of it in general. And I apologize for not covering Jimmy much earlier on the channel. When I first opened my store in 85, I had the wildest idea for the sign. And one of the people, I was going to have 2 people on the sign and have somebody airbrush it for Rock Fantasy. And one was going to be Hendrix's face, or Hendrix, like his whole persona, much like that blacklight poster you can kind of see in the back. And on the other side, I was going to have Randy Rhoads at that time. So I wanted to have like the metal in the classic rock back in 85, but I never made the sign, never got that spot when I was opening up. But I was like, my picks for some signage for the shop. I thought that would have been cool to have both of them represented. It both had passed, by then, of course, Randy in the early 80s when I opened 85. But I'd like to thank everybody for watching this. Please mention in the comments your favorite Hendrix songs from these albums and some Hendrix moments. If anybody was lucky enough to older viewers were able to ever see Jimmy, please make that comment too. And we'll be back with many more episodes on the channel. We're going to dive into 1967 again in a couple weeks. We got some stuff that we're trying to do, some anniversary stuff, and prayers to everyone that's suffering right now around the world, and what's going on with the war, and it's just very devastating what's going on. A lot of our viewers are in Europe and you're much closer to it than we are here in the States, so positive vibes to everyone. And everybody wants to talk a little bit more. We can talk, but I want to wrap it up pretty soon because it's running a little long this episode. But who's got something to say, Ralph?
Yeah, I just I ran. He was talking about Jimmy jamming with people. He would do that all the time when like at Electric Ladyland, he'd be working in the day, and then at night he'd go out to the like Cafe Wa and stuff. And I just recently heard a story about when Deep Purple came to America for the first time, opening for Cream on their farewell tour, and Jimmy really liked Deep Purple, and he asked John Lord to jam with him.
Wow.
And he jammed with John Lord at a little bar in New York, and then the next night he asked him to come back. So there's 2 nights he jammed with John Lord. I just was thinking, wow, how cool that was.
Yeah.
And then talking about covers really quick,
Yeah.
Carnivore does an amazing cover of Manic Depression.
Yes.
Pete Steele was a huge Hendrix fan, and years later he did a version of Hey Joe,
Pete.
but he did Hey Pete, where you going with that axe in your hand? And he switches the lyrics up, and it's a lot crazier. But just wanted to mention that really quick, and that's it.
Cool.
I'm glad you did. I wanted to mention covers too, and one of those was the Carnivore Manic Depression. It's absolutely pummeling and brutal. And one more, a cover of Little Wing, done by a band called Concrete Blonde in the early 90s, kind of an alt rock band back when alternative kind of meant something in those early days of the 90s. It's beautiful, beautiful.
And
I
don't
like to
forget
mention
Stevie
obscure
Ray
covers.
Vaughan.
Oh,
Yeah.
Stevie Ray had,
That was
tipped the
awesome.
hat a few times to good old Jimmy.
Oh yeah, for sure. And of course the covers, that, the couple of the ones that Frank Marino did with Jimmy, of course, Frank had that, the fable that we believed when we were teenagers, that whole story when Frank had the overdose or the acid trip, ended up in the hospital, fell asleep, woke up with the spirit of Jimi Hendrix, but it was all proven false, and it was just like some kind of marketing gimmick that somebody made for Frank. But some of the covers that he's did, of course, the Bob Dylan all on the Watchtower, and just great stuff that Frank Marino paid justice to Jimmy too.
Todd
Check out
Rundgren
Zach.
did "If Six Was Nine" on his Bethel album, and the backing band is Utopia. Really good version.
nice.
I think Government Mule's done a couple Hendrix tunes too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
King Jack, when I went to Woodstock 94, they played
Oh, you were there? Oh my God.
yeah, I was there, and they
Chili
played
Peppers,
Jimi
yeah.
Hendrix, Manic
Chili
Depression.
Peppers do a cover of Fire.
Yeah, they
Zappa
ended
does a crazy cover of Purple
they ended
Haze.
the set with Manic Depression, right? Because it's a bonus track on Dogman. It's the last
That's
song.
right, and that is that's correct.
People don't realize that's a heavy metal waltz. It's a waltz.
Mhm.
That thing is in 3/4 time.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, what's Ralph showing us here? What have you got, Ralph?
Picture
This is
disc.
a
Oh, that's
tribute
cool.
album from the 90s called In From the Sun, picture disc. And it's got Sting, Carlos Santana, Steve Vai, Brian May, John McLaughlin, Taj Mahal, Buddy Miles, Bootsy Collins, Corey Glover, and Toots the Bellmans.
Toots
yeah.
and Maytals. Yeah.
Oh,
Toots,
Any mention of Bootsy Collins just makes me smile, man. Just
Cool.
just Bootsy, man.
Well, anyhow, I think we better wrap this episode up, and we'll hang out and we'll be back. So hit subscribe, hit like, spread this around, man. Spread it around. We need the Rock Fantasy Files to grow, the Rock Fantasy vlog, and check out all our other friends. We got some channels. We'll put it all in the description, and we'll be back soon. So stay heavy.
Peace.